Mr. Chair, Committee, Keith Brooks, State Representative District 78. So the amendment that you have in front of you on Senate Bill 625 is just providing additional clarifying language that we've been working on for several weeks with the department. To just hit the highlights, and I'll be happy to hit them in the bill presentation itself if you'd like, or I can go through them right now just based on what the will of the committee is. There are, give me just one moment, I'm going to pull them up. We have amending language on page 2 that clarified that there could be certain service providers that are outside of traditional settings that this allows for that, such as things like hippotherapy, which can be utilized for a number of educational needs, for occupational speech therapy within that setting, for kids with dyslexia, things like that. So that's clarified there. On another change, page 4, we deleted the word homeschool because that's already in statute, so it didn't need to be redefined. Additionally, later on, there was a change that talked about participating school. We removed homeschool from that as well because a homeschool is just a participating school. We added language on page 6 that allowed for a right to appeal to the state board should someone be expelled from a school and have funds in their account, and they can appeal to the state board for the prevention of closure of that account. And then we dealt with language relative to evidence of misuse. That language is now evidence of intentional misuse, so clarifying that any misuse would have to be intentional and proven under the rules and regulations that are already established by the department. Finally, we changed the initial application window from February 1 to June 1, or sorry, originally it was February 1 to March 31st, extended that to June 1, and then also put in language for additional applications that can be administered or submitted after that, based upon the department's discretion for certain situations like someone moving in from out of state or changing schools after that. So address a number of those things. With that, I would take any questions, but I would move for adoption of the amendment.
Given the sponsor just asked for questions, any questions on amendment? Seeing none, we have a motion to adopt the amendment. No one decided to speak for or against. Anyone wish to speak for or against? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All opposed? Congratulations, you have adopted the amendment. You are now recognized to present your bill as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Committee. With your blessing, Mr. Chair, I'd like to bring Secretary Jacob Oliva to the table with me as well.
That's fine.
Sorry, check that. Courtney Salas Ford to the table with me.
Once you identify yourself, you may be recognized.
Courtney Salas Ford, Department of Education.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Committee. Senate Bill 625 came to us with support of Governor Sanders and Secretary Oliva in the Department of Education as we look at how we can continue to improve what we do in terms of the LEARNS Act and specifically the Education Freedom Accounts. But I wanted to start my presentation off with just a little bit of a history lesson. A number of members of this committee and of our body were not here when the fight for education freedom began a number of years ago. So just a little bit of a history lesson of where we've been. In 2015, the first bill was ever passed that really provided some sense of education freedom in the state of Arkansas. That was passed by Representative House for the Succeed Scholarship Program that allowed for students with disabilities to utilize funds for private schools and other options. The first year of that program, we had 23 students who took advantage of it. That program grew a little bit year after year, where to almost 1,000 at one point, but really nothing more significant because it was very limited in scope. Fast forward to 2021, which was my first session in the House of Representatives. Representative Ken Bragg brought a bill, House Bill 1371. 1371 looked at the opportunity to provide additional private school tuition opportunities for students who met certain qualifications. Those qualifications included that they had to be a household family income of 200%, no greater than 200% of federal poverty level. Frankly, that bill was very limited in scope. It would have helped about 500 students, but it failed by 7 votes on the floor of the House of Representatives. Representative Bragg brought an additional bill later on, which was Senate Bill 680 by he and Senator Dismang, that pared back the original 1371 to impact 250 kids. Still very limited in scope. That limited scope still had the 200% of federal poverty level and the restriction in place. We did pass that by 2 votes on out of this body, and that went into law, and it was known as the PAC, Philanthropic Investment in Arkansas Kids Act. That helped about 250 kids. So the history of education freedom in the state of Arkansas, frankly, has been extremely limited for the last decade. Fast forward to 2023 with the Arkansas Learns Act. I was fortunate to be the House sponsor of Arkansas Learns and lead the charge for increasing the opportunity for education freedom to all students in the state of Arkansas. Year 1, we had just over 5,000 students who took advantage of it. In year 2, that tripled to almost 14,000 students. And now we stand this year, from a universal standpoint, to almost be able to serve 40,000 students. Why do I tell you that? The reason I tell you that is because my engagement and that of my colleague, Senator Davis, has been nothing but strong on this issue since the beginning. In 2021, when Representative Bragg's bill did not pass, I had BLR draft what I called the School Act. I never filed it, but I had it drafted. It was a universal ESA before anyone had ever done a universal ESA. That's where my heart has been. In October of 2022, as universal ESAs were starting to come online, I had another draft of a universal ESA bill that eventually became the language that's what is in Learns. So my heart has been here all along, and I want to state very clearly that any idea that we've done anything but support the idea of education freedom in the state of Arkansas is simply misplaced political theater. So what I want to discuss about House Bill 625. 625 is simply strengthening what we do in Learns. We've never backed down from our commitment to students. Let me hear me say this very clearly. EFAs do not change at all with Senate Bill 625. An EFA student will be funded exactly the same as they are currently, no less than what they are. That includes private school students, homeschool students, micro school students, no one. No funding changes. They still are available for all the funds within it. In fact, we continue to strengthen that funding because funding is tied to our public school foundation funding, which last week we just increased an additional 5%. So right now, at 6854 is the upcoming EFA amount for this upcoming school year. That's going to increase by 5% next year. So our commitment to families in the state of Arkansas is very clear. We have not removed funds. We have not taken funds. We have not caused the opportunity for anyone to have education freedom decrease in any way, and Senate Bill 625 simply does not do that. So the suggestion that anyone, especially someone sitting here at this table or my Senate colleague, is attacking education freedom is simply misguided. If you want to know what an attack is, House Bill 1020, which sought to completely repeal the EFA portion of Learns by my friend Representative Collins, and I told him I was going to say this and he was okay with it, that's an attack on education freedom. An attack on education freedom is repealing the EFA. As you know, that did not make it out of this committee. An attack on education freedom is House Bill 1541, which sought to put regulations on non-public schools to require transportation, which would result in tens of millions of dollars of costs for non-public schools, virtually closing a number of those schools. That's an attack on education freedom. Senate Bill 625 is not. Senate Bill 625 allows us to further strengthen what we're doing for long-term sustainability of the EFA program. So what does this bill not do? This bill does not tell any family in any way what they have to teach their child. Outside of the requirements that are already in law, you got to teach math, you got to teach English language arts, you got to teach science, you got to teach history. Those are already in law. You have to do that to have a high school diploma in the state of Arkansas. That does not change. We do not extend any discussions relative to what you have to teach your student or how you have to teach them in any way. Total freedom exists before this bill. Total freedom exists after this bill. So what does 625 do? 625, and it's about 17 pages long. 625 helps create additional strengthening for the EFA program. If you look at page 1, 625 talks about reasonable costs for co-curricular activities. Reasonable cost is not defined or given a dollar amount. However, it's just suggesting that a reasonable cost for a course that exists somewhere in the state of Arkansas. That can be for fine arts. That can be for theater. So think theater, music, dance, things like that. Those are reasonable costs that are allowed within this this bill. That has not changed. If you want to do educational therapy, as I mentioned on page 2, it defines the amendment defines that outside of traditional settings. Again, perhaps your child benefits from hippotherapy and they're getting reading or occupational or speech or physical therapy in that setting. See that you get up there and the lights just go off. So, that this bill does not impact that in any way. What the bill does from a specific standpoint is it provides an application window. Provides an application window for an initial application for the EFA timeframe from February 1 to June 1. The department is also allowed, again, for additional applications to come after that. And so it provides some consistency with our school choice date. Our school choice date for public schools is June 1. This just provides consistency for that initial EFA application. The other thing that SB625 does that has gotten a lot of interest in it is that we do look at 2 different categories of transportation and the category of extracurricular activities. Transportation, think reimbursement for gas. You're reimbursed at 52 cents per mile. It limits it to 25% of the EFA amount per year. So this coming year, that reflects $1,713 is what can be allowed for that. That's about $150 a month in gas costs. It also allows for 25% for extracurricular activities. So think maybe you want to have a D1 membership for your child to get excellent athletic training. A D1 membership here in Little Rock costs right under $1,700 for one person for an entire year for unlimited visits. This bill would still allow for that. It would allow you to take a field trip. If you've got 3 kids who are on EFAs and you want to take field trips in the state of Arkansas, you're limited at $1,713 per student this coming year, almost $1,800 next year. You could take a great field trip to Mount Magazine and stay the weekend at the lodge if you wanted to for a great opportunity for a field trip here in the state of Arkansas under this. It doesn't limit that completely. It just puts guardrails on appropriate categories. So within that, or within the rest of the bill, we talk about intentional misuse of funds. So it provides for the department to continue to monitor how funds are used, and if someone is using those intentionally, or there's evidence that are using them, misusing them intentionally. So think buying 20 school uniforms, plaid skirts, and then reselling those because they're not actually using those for your own student. That's a misuse of funds. So the department has already promulgated rules for that, so that just allows clarification within that. Finally, I want to address the idea of the funds within the Education Freedom Account ever running out, and the language that's in here that talks about should funds not be enough to cover all that is necessary. Just a quick reminder that is the exact same language that's on page 92 of LEARNS. It is fiscally responsible for us as a legislative body to ensure that as this program continues to grow and as we continue to fund it as a legislative body, that we are being fiscally responsible. And so that language, again, is direct from LEARNS, and all it's doing is putting the students in the categories as were already specified within the LEARNS Act originally. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Representative McCollum, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee. Thank you for running through the amendments earlier, Representative Brooks. I know most of the time we like to adopt amendments so we can see kind of the impact on the totality of the bill. I say that to kind of lead up to my question on the subject that I think you said at the end on the subject of misuse and fraud. Obviously, we're all aligned on we don't want fraud on any important program. Can you tell me a little bit about the change that was made as it references?
So the reference language originally, and I'm trying to get to that page of it.
Or was that part already amended?
That was not amended. So
it's at the end here?
Yeah,
right?
we added in 2 places, I believe it was 2 places. We added the word evidence of intentional. It was evidence of misuse. We added the word evidence of intentional misuse. So when we start talking about things like fraud, that gets into a legal definition. This is just clarifying that that if someone makes a rounding error or makes a mistake in accounting for the funds, that the intent of the department, intent of this bill is not to ever go after a family for that. But if someone is intentionally attempting to misuse funds that are originally taxpayer dollars and utilized for the benefit of the student, that the department can look into that, which I think is appropriate for us from a fiduciary responsibility standpoint in the state.
Thank you. And then I guess this might be more of a question for the department. And I thought about it as you were kind of giving the example, Representative Brooks, on maybe someone reselling school uniforms or something. And I know you were just using it as an example of behavior we don't want for people to literally be using.
Just off the top of my head, yes.
To make money. But it kind of got me thinking along like implementing how we even investigate these type of things. What can you see on your end in terms of maybe that example? Maybe that's a bad example. But anyway, you want to answer the question.
Right, yeah. So obviously our staff is involved daily in the approval and administration of the funds in the accounts. In order to purchase something like that, the parent has to go through the online portal where vendors are approved and products are made available. So we monitor that every day. But to what Representative Brooks said, there's almost 40,000 students. So obviously it's difficult to look at every single purchase every day. We have met with the vendor Class Wallet that operates the portal, and they are putting in safeguards as well to try to address those things, so that if you do see a purchase that comes up for 20 skirts or 5 laptops, it may just signal us to look at that further to see maybe it is justified. Maybe they just want to wear a different skirt every day. But so that we can, again, look into it, investigate to see if there is some intentional misuse, an intent to misuse funds, or if it was just an accident. Maybe they meant to hit 2 and accidentally hit 20. There's valid mistakes that can be made. There are valid purchases that might rise to the level of suspicion. But if we can look at those, ask questions, and investigate and show that it's not intentional, then obviously that's something that would still be approved. And so it's a combination of staff reviewing and the vendor software putting safeguards in place just to try to identify situations like that.
Okay, thank you. And if the chair allows it, I might just go follow up along the same lines of some of the amendments, specifically on the appeal language.
Could I just have one quick clarification on that? Not clarification, but additional. I got a number of messages reached out to me about asking why we would not require our public schools to have a deep look into how they spend their funds. And I just want to remind this body and everyone that we do have what's called legislative audit, and everyone can feel free, starting in the next couple months, the second week of the month, to come on Thursday and Friday and hear how our legislative audit committee looks at all of our public schools. We have an entire staff. I believe legislative audit has 276 employees, if I remember right, from the budget we approved. And they are, you will find on a monthly basis that our public schools sit before this body and have to answer a lot of very detailed questions, and sometimes those detailed questions can get uncomfortable and even be referred to prosecuting attorneys. And so I believe this body does a very good job of continuing to expect accountability for funds that originate as taxpayer funds.
Thank you, Representative Brooks. Mr. Chair, so I think I'll start the next question with what my concern was coming in here today, and then maybe through the appeal language that was added in, and maybe what that looks like. So the concern coming in here today was if there was some misbehavior by a student that got expelled for whatever reason. I was kind of like playing that out in my head, and I thought the language had read that would be automatically EFA is taken away. The concern there for me would be, I get it if things weren't working out with that particular school, but if my logic is it's kind of like your account that you're saving and might want to use elsewhere, why should it just go away because of bad behavior? And so what I'm hearing now is, okay, there's going to be an appeal process, and I guess if you could just talk to that change and how you would see that playing out with this new language.
So page 6, and this would be on page 2 of your amendment that was passed out. So it's page 6, line 6, section B. If a participating student's account is closed following the occurrence of an event under previous subdivision, participating student's parent may appeal the division's decision to close a participating student's account to the state board according to the rules promulgated by the state board. So the intent there would be that should someone be expelled from a participating provider, for whatever reason, obviously that would fall under the rules of that particular provider. Every school has a unique set of rules of what's permissible by students, and some are rigid, some are not rigid. But this would allow, should that happen, and the student not be utilizing those funds, obviously for their education purposes, is what's directed, that they would be able to appeal to the state board for continuance. So the example that I gave was, let's say that you've got a school that expels someone because they don't permit drinking alcohol. I would hope that most of us wouldn't allow that for underage folks, but some schools that would cause someone to be expelled. So let's say they're expelled in September of the school year. However, the school allows for them to return in the following January. That's what their punishment is, and obviously that would be up to the particular school. So this would allow for the parent to appeal to the state board to leave those account funds in place because the student's going to be utilizing them in the future.
And if I can add, one of the reasons that we highlighted that as an area that we wanted to add some clarification is because previously, in that example, if a student was expelled and then went and enrolled in public school, we were required to keep their account basically frozen and on hold for 3 years, and that they may not have had any intention of ever going back to private school or homeschool. If they did, that wouldn't be an issue. Certainly they can just transfer their account. But in that case that we were previously held to, we couldn't make those funds available to other students. And so that was the reason for wanting a change, so that we could immediately, if that student was not going to continue using their account and go back to public school, then we could immediately make those funds available to other students.
Thank you. I have more. Most of mine are switching away from the amendment. I'll get in line.
You're the only one in the queue. Let it rip.
There is no line to get in.
So these questions are more around, I think, like percentages on allocating extracurricular transportation, and part of this is likely just my inability to understand definitions and maybe what an extracurricular is versus co-curricular. Specifically, I think you even mentioned this on when you were talking about, hey, we're not saying you can't do these things, we're just saying X amount of monies can only be spent towards these things. Music, instruments, what's the definition?
So if you look on page 1,
Thank you.
As already defined within this law, within this bill,
Yes.
page 1, line 35, reasonable costs associated with co-curricular courses in the fine arts.
So that's a fine art? Okay.
Clearly, yes. Music is listed next, STEM, if the co-curricular course is offered by a public school within the state of Arkansas. So I don't know how all 200-plus public schools address fine arts or music or dance. I've been around a number of large and small schools who have thriving programs. I'll use my friends at Cabot, who their theater director was one of the 4 finalists for Teacher of the Year this past year. They have a very broad-based fine arts program that provides tremendous opportunities for students in theater and dance and music lessons and piano and guitar and a number of things. So there's a school right there that offers a very broad base. And so this is just saying that reasonable costs associated with that. So that's frankly very broad in my opinion.
Yeah, and I appreciate the answer. Thank you. I think, and just so you know, these questions, and you probably know this, they're not random. It's they are homeschool parents that are saying, hey, here's my example. What is it? How am I going to apply, this new law to what I'm doing? And
go get your music lessons. Learn how to play guitar. Learn how to play piano.
Right.
That's absolutely approved.
Okay. Section 212 course definition. My question is, could you please address this concern, or if it should be a concern at all? Course definition provides a lot of power to disallow online courses, and the example given from this perspective of this family is both kids use art of problem solving for math. It's a very advanced level. They were able to get approved to sell books through the program, but their online courses are not approved for EFA funds. And they reference section 212.
Obviously, if we're discussing what a specific vendor is, that would be something that the department would evaluate, just like they do with all vendors. I believe that as of last week, we had 904 vendors that were approved in the EFA program, with another 152 that were pending. So my take would be the department has done a very good job. In fact, I got off the phone with a vendor right before I walked in here that offered kind of unique co-curricular or extracurricular services. That is an approved vendor and will continue to be. But I would say that sounds like that may be more of an issue relative to having a vendor approved, just providing clarity of the benefit they're providing students. But again, I would say fairly broad in our understanding of what a course can be used. I know a number of not just homeschool families, but non-public school families who utilize online courses in the course of their learning that it's approved under the EFA program.
And if anyone does have a specific question, like any parent that is receiving an EFA, they can contact our staff, and Class Wallet has customer service staff available as well. If there's a question about why something wasn't approved, I would find it hard to believe that it's tied to the definition, and that it may just more be so an issue with how the vendor coded it or how they presented it. But again, we would have to look into that very specifically to find out why.
Right, and as I read it, it sounds to me maybe that's a current issue, not necessarily a change in the language. But then when I go back to the bill, I mean, I guess it. So here's my question on section 2, line 12, and I'll read it. Course means a discrete program of study that follows a predetermined syllabus or specification, and then it goes on with more language. How is that a change from the current way that y'all do things? I guess why was that part needed?
It's really not a change. It
Okay.
is codifying current practice. We feel more comfortable when things are codified versus
Right.
just having, obviously we have limited authority to explain things in rules, but we feel more comfortable when things are codified. So that is aligned with current practice, and I feel very comfortable sharing that our Assistant Commissioner for School Choice, who oversees this program, said he's not aware of any courses or curriculum that is provided online that has not been approved. So again, we make every effort to make sure things are approved, but if something is not that a parent is interested in, they can reach out to the department and we can look at that.
Thank you for that. Admission to museums. If this becomes law, would that be something that?
An admission to a museum would fall under the line of an extracurricular activity. Great. You've got $1,713 per student in this upcoming year. If you've got 3 kids, that's a lot of museum visits. Go
Right.
get it, please. Go to the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts. Go to the museum down in Hot Springs. Go find ways to educate your kids, and we are happy to allow that within Learn's EFAs.
Thank you.
I have a question relative to something we discussed, but just for the benefit of everybody here. One point of confusion that might be clarified is like a driving school, because transportation, that's different than a driving school. That was a comment that I received. Can you close the gap there? Because I know we talked
Again,
about
a
this.
driving school would be a course of study. That's a course of study that's offered at local public schools in the state of Arkansas, probably all over. I don't know how many schools. I'm sure that probably approaching 50, 80, 100 schools probably offer something like that.
But what we're saying for the categorical of transportation versus something like a driving school, they are different. So
That does not fall under the category. Again, transportation would be reimbursed for gas.
Yep.
52 cents a mile.
Representative Brown, you're recognized for your question.
Yes, thank you. A constituent reached out to me, and you may have already answered this, but forgive me. Concerns about SB625. Parts of this bill may blah, 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 blah. Let's see. It limits or persecutes homeschoolers for having the ability to go outside their district for extracurricular activities.
That language is not in the bill.
Thank you.
If you look at page 2 of the bill as engrossed, page 1, extending into page 2, line 1, reasonable costs associated with co-curricular courses in the fine arts, music, or STEM fields if the co-curricular course is offered by a public school within the state.
No other Representative McCollum, you're recognized for question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess, you know, I think a lot of concerns that I might have heard before today had been addressed through a lot of these amendments, or at least maybe the intent was made clear through amendments. The only thing that I think that I've heard in terms of a different perspective, maybe between where we are currently and then now after this is amended, is just around the percentages and, you know, our beliefs on extracurricular. And I heard you reference versus public schools, and I think that's kind of where my mind was at. So can you talk a little bit more about, okay, we want to make sure these dollars are being used towards educational experiences, getting students to learn. 25% is gas, 25% transportation, or 25% cap on extracurricular. Is that the same type of framing we look? And I'm
So
looking
let's
for Cozart of, you know,
sure.
our experience on, you know, everything from
Happy
matrix.
to answer that question.
Yeah.
So when you look at the matrix, and obviously I've dialed pretty deep into the matrix the last couple of years. When you look at the matrix, we send $72 for extra duty funds this year to public schools, $72 per student. In FY26, 74. FY27 is going to be 76. So that's what we send currently to our public schools per student. And I got several questions relative to, well, why don't you prevent them from spending no more than 25% on football? Okay, well, let me dig into that. So I reached out to what I would consider probably the largest football program in the state, and that'd be the Bryant School District. And I just asked the question, tell me, open your books to me. What are you spending on this? And obviously you have what we send to them under the matrix. Under operations and maintenance, they allocate $125,000 for athletics, complete athletics. And that's all of their kids who are involved in athletics for an entire school year. They've got 1,200 kids who are involved in athletics. That's not football, that's every single sport. They allocate $125,000. That goes down to $104 per student for them. So again, I believe that public schools, and is there misuse, or would we prefer that they use in different ways? I'm sure we can find examples. And so that's why I'd highlight the great work that Representative Cozart is doing, that we will begin in earnest next week of looking at a different funding formula to modernize our funding formula to make sure that our schools are being held accountable, and that we're also continuing to support them in the way that we're constitutionally required to. But I would suggest that it is very clear that these suggestions in terms of percentages are nowhere near out of line relative to what our public schools would be spending in terms of extracurricular type activities, and that's very clear based on the matrix.
And you would say the same on transportation as well?
I don't have the transportation numbers in front of me, but I'm very confident that public schools not spending 25% of their dollars on transportation when you look at it, because that would be almost in excess of $2,000 per student, and so there wouldn't be a lot of money left over for anything else.
Are there any other questions from committee? Seeing none, we're going to move to the public comment period. Would love to have Paula Bean come to the table and speak. And Ms. Bean, once you introduce yourself for the record and where you're from, you may be recognized.
Hello, my name is Paula Bean. I am a homeschool mom of 4 children, and we are from somewhere in between Conway and Greenbrier, Arkansas. We call it no man's land. I have a little speech here prepared, but I'm going to be honest. The representative here answered just most of my questions, or a lot of them. But I still wanted to come up here today because I wanted to be a voice for homeschoolers and for homeschool parents. I spoke at the Senate committee last week, and this bill failed in Senate committee for some language, but it did end up passing and going into the Senate floor, where it did get passed by 1 vote. I admit that I came into that committee with some preconceived notions, because homeschool families are a very skittish group of families. We believe that the government is against us. And we have reason to believe that. Not necessarily because of you guys, but because of some things I'm about to mention. I am so thankful for the state of Arkansas. I am so thankful for the EFA, and I am so thankful that when my students graduate high school, they will say that they are a product of their parents and their state, that their state invested in them. Now, I would like to share my voice from homeschoolers, and then I have a couple of questions and concerns about a few of the amendments. Senator Davis, during the Senate Education Committee meeting last Wednesday, said that she believed 99% of parents were using the funds correctly. On the Senate discussion floor, she stated that 44% of the funds were used by parents went to educational material, but that 56% of the funds were used for non-educational material. Now, neither one of these things were defined. But the following day, the Arkansas Times ran an article with the headline, 56% of taxpayer funds are being used for non-educational items. Now, if you'll excuse me, I brought a few things, such as my son's ukulele. The EFA funds in the past have not paid for the music instrument itself, but it has paid for his lessons. He also has some artwork from his art lessons that he takes. And then I have a whole bag of curriculum in history, science, and language. I've also provided therapy tools for him and other things at the request of his therapist that have helped his disabilities. I would ask people who are against this, what do you consider educational and what do you consider non-educational? For my son, and what I see in my bag of tricks over here, my bog bag, which is the briefcase of homeschoolers, right, is that I see a well-rounded individual who will grow exponentially, who is being provided for the best education tailored toward him. I have provided an excellent team of people using a significant amount of the EFA funds to help him grow. And he will be an asset to the state of Arkansas in the future. Now, the reason why homeschoolers are skittish is because after this story came out, you can look at the comments, is that the rhetoric against homeschoolers has gotten so bad over the last year that my husband and I have decided to leave social media. We have seen comments that homeschooling should be considered a form of abuse, that every homeschool family should be investigated by the Child Protective Services. Now, I'm not saying these comments are from anybody in government. I'm just saying this is the rhetoric. We have seen so many articles saying that any problem with the public school system is at the fault of the very hand of homeschoolers. Now, I understand Senator Davis was using the statistics as a launching point for amending the bill, which a lot of the amendments I do agree with. But we must understand that there's a large group of people who hate homeschoolers. So to answer some questions, Senator Davis mentioned that some of the funds could be being misused, and that she saw this through social media. Parents who were receiving funds for their children began a Facebook page that gave us a conversation space where we could ask questions regarding what we did and did not qualify for. We could share our likes and frustrations and make comments about items that did qualify. Particular news sites literally sent spies into this Facebook group and kept records of what everybody was discussing. The writer couldn't find any concrete evidence, so they made a vague story about how the funds could be misused. Another particular news article that was referenced in the Senate last week that came out several months ago was about students using the funds for equestrian program and gymnastics. It was published by the Arkansas Times, I believe. The article made the assumption that only wealthy people were receiving funds because the majority of vendors were located in central Arkansas or north of central Arkansas. They mentioned how horseback riding is one of the vendors, which disgusted them, even though horseback riding is well known to be a vital tool in therapies for multiple disorders. Other than horseback riding, the article was vague as well because of the lack of concrete evidence of fraud and misuse. I am not afraid of changing this bill, and I'm not afraid of amending it. But I do wonder sometimes why people are so afraid of us. The second thing was Senator Sullivan reminded me that the EFA funds came from taxpayer money, to which my reply was taxpayers pay for all of children's education. But this has not always been the case. I'm not exactly sure what it costs to send a child through the public school system. We get 90% of what it costs the state, which would make the cost to send a child about $8,000. That is not what we get. We get 90% of that. However, that does not include federal and local costs, nor does it include such things as free or reduced lunch, grants, or programs like our current local school buys every student K through 6 their school supplies. But if we stay with that $8,000, my family has actually saved the Arkansas taxpayers $104,000 minimum since we began homeschooling. And even now that we are receiving the EFA funds, we're still only getting 90% of what a public school student would get. I mention this because people want to act like this is a handout. And we are getting verbally attacked from variety of sides because of this money. The EFA funds help validate us homeschoolers by the state government, but it also put a target on our backs. However, I would like people to consider the alternative. If every single homeschooler in the state decided to send their kids to public school next week, there would have to be money to go with them. And it would be significantly more than the $6,864 I'm receiving a year for my student, and that's the max that I can receive currently. In addition to this, our overcrowded schools and overworked teachers would be slammed with more students than they had capacity to hold. We need all types of education avenues so that each child has the chance of getting a good education. And I am thankful that the state of Arkansas realizes that. Now, with that being said, I would like to ask a few questions or point to a few issues I have with some of the amendments. A lot of them were already answered, so I won't take up too much of your time. I would first like to say that I agree with the cap on extracurricular activities and the transportation. Originally, that was 1/6 of the funds, and I even agreed with that. I believe that the funds for transportation and athletics as described should remain at that, honestly, but it has been bumped to 25%, and that's okay. But that means that a parent can use up to $1,700 for transportation, which, just as a side note, we are under the understanding that our own vehicle transportation did not count under that transportation, that it had to be a Uber or a public transportation of that matter. So what he said right here, that we could put in our own mileage, that is the first time that I've ever heard of that. But a person can spend $1,700 on transportation, but they cannot use $500 of their funds to buy necessary equipment to access the internet. So for example, online, I had it, but now it's somewhere. I think it's, just a second. On page 2, line 8, it says access to technology has been stricken from that. My understanding is that was the part of the law that allowed us to buy equipment for internet. So we are a rural family. Only internet available to us was Starlink, and so we had to be able to use the EFA funds to buy the equipment for Starlink, the equipment. The EFA is not paying for our internet monthly bills. It is not. It doesn't provide that for anybody. So I would request that because we live in Arkansas, because we have rural communities everywhere, that access to technology or access to internet be put back into this bill. The other question I have was the art, music, and STEM. Now, granted, some of those questions have just been answered. But I would ask you this, what is the clarification here? So my daughter is in the 5th grade. She would like to take violin next year. That is normally not orchestra is not normally something that is offered until the later years. I want to make sure that she's still able to take that, just because it's not offered for her particular grade. Now, I was concerned about the expulsion amendment, but that has already been discussed. And I would ask for a little bit more clarification on the field trips. So in the past year, we have not been allowed to use this money to pay for any kind of museum passes or anything of that nature, but now we're saying that that is something that is going to be open to us. And I would like clarification on that, is that it's going to be a vendor that we would have to use. But my last concern, and then I'll be over, is with the emergency clause. The measures put in place for this year was like a contract with the current EFA users. Our last amount of funds dropped last Thursday. This means that parents are currently spending their funds and awaiting reimbursements for those funds. Waiting for reimbursements and approvals for items and classes based on the current law. Some of these parents are using credit cards to float expenses until their reimbursements are approved, which usually takes about 14 days. Hardly any of these parents realize that this law is about to be pushed through because they trust what they were told at the beginning of the year will remain the same until at least the next school year. I think each parent realizes that there could be some changes next year, but parents are not prepared to face changes on Thursday of this week. If you push this emergency through, you could be leaving some parents in serious financial binds and breaking their trust. At this point, what is to say that next year, when there are significantly more people involved, that you can make significant changes during the school year again that would have a bigger impact? This is also, in my opinion, hard on the people who are working at approving funds because now they have to learn the new laws and put them in place while approving people's funds. I believe that another amendment should be added to this bill that should read that any amendments to the law would not take place until the following school year, so that parents have a chance to drop out of the program if they could not agree with new terms. Changing the terms during the course of the year leaves parents stuck to a contract that they did not initially agree to. We want to trust this program and build a bridge between homeschoolers and the government. There are definitely changes that need to be made, but those changes could wait until the 2025-2026 school year because, again, the funds have already been distributed and they are already being spent. It would just cause mass frustration and chaos to change things now. And thank you for listening to me, and this concludes my speech.
Are there any questions from committee? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Representative Vaught, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Due to time constraints and several of us having to go to a different committee meeting, I make a motion that we limit debate to 3 minutes.
I have a motion to limit debate to 3 minutes. Is there any discussion on that motion?
How many do we have signed up?
We only have 3 more signed up.
I'm not doing it to be mean, but we're going to lose a quorum.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I guess what I'd say is we've gone this long plenty of times. If there's only 3 people left, I think they've heard what we just said about our concerns. I'd rather it just play out, but that's my opinion.
How about this? Motion, can we change your motion to 5 minutes?
Sure.
Okay. I have a motion to limit debate to 5 minutes per witness. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Ayes have it. So from here on, anyone that's come, I understand that some of you have come a long way. Just in the interest of quorum, if you would keep your comments to 5 minutes apiece, that would be greatly appreciated. So next on the list, we have Miss Alisha Wilkins. And Ms. Wilkins, once you introduce yourself into the microphone, you'd be recognized to present your testimony. Sorry, Alisha, would you mind hitting your button?
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Sorry, Alisha Wilkins. And I won't be long. I'm really just coming to speak from my heart. I am a homeschool mom, and I have 2 boys. I'm also a former foster mother, and I'm an adoptive mother. So this program to me is been utilized in an amazing way. So I came today really to be against this, to be honest with you, but I feel a little bit more peace about it after hearing some things that I've heard today. My biggest issue was the 25% cap, and let me explain why. Because I feel that as a homeschool mom, and I think she just spoke a lot, kind of where I was coming from, was that it should be our decision as parents to be able to decide what best fits our kids' education. And as homeschool moms, we don't put our children in an educational box. So what suits my children best as far as music, woodworking, and if I'm not mistaken, I heard that a woodworker was denied becoming a vendor. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but my boys would utilize something like that. So I think there just needs to be a little bit more understanding in the homeschool community of what we utilize and leaving those decisions up to the parents. We've been given the funds, and so trust us with that is what I would like to say. Being a former foster mom, I have seen children that utilize things in therapy that would benefit. Horseback riding is one of those things. And so it might not fit a box for every child in the EFA program, but it might fit for some. So that's really what I have to say on that particular issue. Just don't put it all in one box. You know, trust us with the funds. Allow us to make those decisions for our children. You know, that's. I feel a little. I understand the regulations. We agreed to the rules. We agreed to the testing, and let that play out. You know, let it play out. We've not even gone through the first fiscal year, and it seems like we're already just trying to put stipulations and more regulations and more things on top of it. Kids work best when they're healthy and happy and free, and let us get through our testing. You know, let it play out. Let's see what happens over the next year, the next 2 years, and so that's what I would have to say on that, and just let it play out. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkins.
Yes.
Are there any questions from committee? Seeing none. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I want to make sure I pronounce this correct. Jeffrey Gaines? Or sorry, Miss Gaines? I apologize. I'm sorry. You have better cursive than I can read. If you wouldn't, Naz, would you mind hitting her mic for her? What I'd ask you to do is just say your name and where you're from, and then after that you can give your speech.
Yes, sir. You'll probably have to cut me off. I didn't know there was a limit. I may read fast. I can't sit down and hold him. Sir, he'll wake up. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Tiffany Gaines. I am a homeschool graduate through the Arkansas State Homeschool Association, class of 2002, under Governor Mike Huckabee. I am the wife of a mariner, a Navy veteran, a mother of 5, and a homeschool educator to 3 school-age children. Thank you very much for having me today. I am very grateful to live in a country and under a government that hears the voices of its people, and it's truly my honor to be here with you today. I would like to address some issues I have with Senate Bill 625 and the information that it was brought to the committee and now to the floor with. He'll wake up, I got him. It's okay, thanks, Dad. He's awesome, by the way. Thank you very much for taking the time to hear our concerns. In regards to Senate Bill 625, the Arkansas Times quotes Senator Davis in saying, quote, right now, they could spend 100% of the funds we give to the EFAs on extracurriculars and transportation. Right now, they could spend $7,000 on baseball lessons if they want, end quote. This is a grave assumption placed upon a demographic that has a verified standing of doing what is best for their students, thus producing both educated and eloquent graduates who are excellent independent thinkers who are versed in effective, respectful communication and the lost art of intellectual debate. The assumption of potential misappropriation and frivolous spending was addressed well by Opportunity Arkansas in a letter dated April 10th of this year and addressed to the members of the General Assembly. I would like to reference the 4th paragraph of this letter. Quote, we know clearly that the rate of fraud in ESA programs across the country is minuscule. For example, in 2020, the Arizona Auditor General reviewed 168,020 approved transactions from Arizona ESA participants over a 1-year period and found 1 improper transaction from an unapproved merchant at a whopping $30. Given this fact, there is no reason to try to overregulate the LEARNS Act because of potential, not actual, misuse. In the course of researching for this bill, my husband, myself, my father, and my three other fellow homeschool mothers in various districts have all attempted to figure out how our different local districts allocate funds to the same departments that this bill is attempting to limit our funds to. All of us encountered the same obstacle. The allocations of funds to these programs are either entered as zero, lumped as regular courses, or they are not mentioned at all. After we failed to discover appropriations to the fiscal reports, I began making phone calls to my local family and friends who are educators in the state. One teacher is the head of the Gifted and Talented program, which includes all students from elementary to high school. She has a budget of $500 for the entire program year. An art teacher has 650 students, is also given a $500 budget. That is a budget of 77 cents per child for the whole year. There is a relatively new performing arts building with lights that have been out for 2 years. Requests for maintenance have been denied due to no funds for rent a scissor lift. While there was equipment rental business in the same town for at least one of those years, and plenty of students' parents who own businesses that would have had that same equipment. A band department is so consistently delinquent in funds that they are not able to make repairs to their band equipment. They're trying to rotate them. With no easy access to true transparency, on the public school funds appropriations and so many departments having inadequate funds, I am left with a great deal of questions and no faith in your administration to tell me how and where I should be spending my funds and how I should educate my children. Arkansas ranks 45 out of 50. 45. Perhaps if the legislation that you had passed regarding public education ranked our students somewhere in the upper 25%, we might be more inclined to hear your advice. However, at this point, your words do not resound as wisdom, but as fear and constraint. I'm going to abbreviate this so I also listen to teachers talk about their exhaustion and mentally and just physically exhausted from dealing with administration while they're trying to teach their students. They're paying out of pocket to teach their students because the money that is going to them isn't going to their students. Many of these families, I have 4 teachers leaving. There are many students leaving. They're leaving the public school system in droves. Many of these families leaving your system are current and future recipients of the EPA. As your oversight and legislation have failed them in public school, I would ask that you give both their parents and their private school educators a chance to educate these children in the methods best for them, and that you take some time to watch the program fully unfold, and then watch the wonders that they are capable of. Skipping forward, in summary, Senate Bill 625 came to the floor with incomplete information and sought to make claims that it has no validity for, and made assertions about parents that are both untrue and volatile. This bill claims that the government must take control because parents could use monies that some people in this room want to argue are inappropriate or nonsensical, all while the children in their state and under their care are ranking 45th in a nation of 50. Homeschool graduates are highly sought after by universities because of their academic dedication, their skills for critical thinking and research. The bill claims to seek and hold EFA participants fiscally responsible. I wasn't able to find any of your information very easily, could have done it by going door to door, didn't have the time. But is this truly fiscal transparency? EPA persons had not even had time for this program to be fully out of the gate. You want to claim that we have percentages. There's also allotments for computers. The non-educational funds, we can't find that listed as what they are, but there are computers and printers, and I guarantee you that these things are necessary. If a student is to type a report, they're going to need a computer. If they're going to have a report, they're going to have to present it. It needs a printer. The printer needs paper. If a school attends a private school, they're going to need a uniform to attend. And I guarantee you when a student sits down to write a mathematical equation, they are going to need a pencil. You cannot say that we have 3 years, we get this purchase every 3 years. We're right out of the gate, and that's where everyone's taking this. If you want your children, if you want this state to succeed, you have to do better than 45 out of 50. We haven't yet. Give the parents the opportunity. Someone's got to carry this torch forward, and it's them. Give them the opportunity and give them the time to prove you what a great job they can do. In the future, this generation here is going to have to carry us forward. And right now, 45 out of 50 is extremely dim. Give the children the opportunity. Give the parents. They have their best interest in mind more than anyone else possibly could. And we will not fail our children. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Gaines. Next up, last to speak is Matthew Ladner. Mr. Ladner, once you introduce yourself into the microphone, you may be recognized. We do have a 5-minute.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dr. Matthew Ladner. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, so I'm the one that came a while. And I was a part of the original team that created the first account-based choice program in Arizona in 2011. I serve as a senior advisor for K-12 policy implementation with the Heritage Foundation, but I'm here today to represent my own views, which is the standard practice of my organization. So thank you for having me. And let me first start to Chairman Brooks to say that I want to start actually by thanking you for passing the program. Since I've been involved in these programs since 2011, I am aware of how much grief they bring into your life and people complaining about various things. And it's been my observation that lawmakers, maybe it doesn't work this way in Arkansas, but it's been my observation that lawmakers hear a lot more complaints than they do thanks. So let me start by thanking you. And I was aware, Chairman Brooks, that you had earned your stripes in the school choice movement before I got here. And having listened to your presentation, when your time comes, I'm pretty sure the Valkyries will take you off to school choice Valhalla to meet with Dr. Friedman, although that'll be up to him rather than me. So let me just start by noting, echoing a few things that have been noted already. Ed Choice calculated that the average EFA beneficiary receives 56% of the total public funds that a public school student would provide. This is also the case in Arizona, where we can almost put 2 students in our empowerment scholarship programs for the average cost of putting 1 student in the district system. Sort of the deal that we've struck is that the participants are getting less total dollars, but more flexibility in how those dollars are spent. We think that's a good deal for the participants. It's also a good deal for the taxpayers in Arizona. ESAs in every state operate as a system of ordered liberty, not as a free-for-all, right? There are program guardrails. There are allowed expenses, there are disallowed expenses, and there have to be efforts to prevent fraud. I think everyone understands and appreciates that. Was very pleased to hear the previous person note the fact that the Arizona Auditor General audited 168,000 ESA purchases in Arizona and found exactly 1 inappropriate purchase for $30. That actually would get the misuse of funds rate far, far below 1% of the total funds. Of course, every publicly funded program has some degree of misuse of funds, and we want to keep that as low as possible. But just for a point of comparison, the United States GAO had a report on the school lunch program, found a 16% misuse of funds. The National School Breakfast Program, 23%. And Mr. Chairman and Mr. Acting Chairman, I've never heard a choice opponent propose getting rid of those programs or wanting to apply the same standards that they talk about the ESA program with. I provided a handout. I don't know if it got distributed or not, but the main point of this handout, this is a graphic from the New York Times, about how just unequal our educational outcomes are. The most important one is on the far right here, and this is a chart that's drawing on academic research about enrichment funding, educational enrichment. And basically what it shows is that upper income people have spent more and more and more money on educational enrichment, and lower income people spend some, but their spending is flat, okay? When we created the ESA program in Arizona, we were very aware of this academic research, and part of our aspirations were to democratize the accessibility of people to do more of these types of activities. We didn't want to mandate it, but we did want to make it available to them. And this is probably the beginning of my concern with the idea of capping extracurricular activities. I'm very, reticent to see that as a direction because we know, and there's a growing academic body of research that shows a lot of these activities have a lot of educational benefit. That includes research that started at the University of Arkansas with my Heritage Foundation colleague, Dr. Jay Green, which have studied the academic benefits of attending a field trip to Crystal Bridges, and also the benefits of plays.
Dr. Ladner,
yes.
I'm sorry that your time has elapsed.
Okay, well, the last thing I would just like to say is that in addition to other problems, just requiring people to account for their expenses is a significant regulatory burden and is unfortunate. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions from committee? Seeing none, thank you, Dr. Ladner.
Thank you.
There's seeing no one else signed up to speak for or against. Chairman Brooks, you're recognized to close for your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee. Dr. Ladner, to mention my name and Milton Friedman's name the same, those don't deserve to be in the same room, even at the same time. So very kind words, and I appreciate you very much. So, committee, just want to address maybe just a couple of things that were said as I close here. And first, to any homeschool parent who may have faced comments or rhetoric, you would know very clearly that none of those came from me or this body. People will say ridiculous things online. I promise you, I have, as Dr. Ladner said, I've earned my stripes. Since Learns was dropped in February of 23, I've been attacked. My family's been attacked. People have said things about me that are completely untrue. People have attacked my wife, my children, and everything above. So I promise you, I understand what it's like for rhetoric to be communicated out there that is wholly unfair and inaccurate. This body, me specifically, have done nothing but support what our homeschool friends do, and please know that this legislation is relative to EFA dollars, not homeschool spend of EFA dollars, but EFA dollars, so that it applies equally. So I want to make sure that I address that. I also want to address that most people don't know, but in 2023, when we ran Learns, we were approached by the largest homeschool organization in the United States, as well as a number of other ones, who asked us to please not include homeschool families in this because they did not want a part of it at all. I was not willing to do that because I knew the benefit to a lot of my homeschool friends who do as good or better of a job of educating their children than anybody ever could imagine in the entire United States of America. And so know that we are here to continue to support, and I want to thank Family Council, who's Arkansas's largest homeschool advocacy organization, for being supportive of SB 625. So just a clarification, there are no boxes in this. If you need to buy a computer for your child, buy a computer for your child. If you need to buy an internet device that supports your online learning, that's approved according to the department. So I think most of the issues that we've discussed, we've already addressed, and they're already permitted. SB 625 does not change that. So in closing, SB 625 does nothing to change the amount of dollars that flow to the family for the benefit of the student. It simply enhances what we're doing in the state of Arkansas for long-term sustainability of our EFA program. Our commitment remains the same. The students' needs are primary, the students' needs are first, and we will continue to commit to that in the state of Arkansas, and I'm proud that almost 40,000 students in this following school year are going to be able to take advantage of that, because that is what is right for the student. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm closed. I make a motion to pass as amended.
There's a motion to pass as amended on the table. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. Congratulations, your bill is passed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee.